Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Tuesday Tips. My name, as always, is Michael Barber here on our channel at Grow Schools. We're here to chat today with Susan Yem. We asked Susan to come in and have a chat with me on all things mission statements. We see a lot of mission statements, having worked with almost 100 schools over the last few years on their enrollment marketing initiatives. And Susan is a member of our enrollment marketing team, and we asked her because this is a topic that is near and dear to her heart, to come in and have a chat about mission statements. So we'll say first, hello, and how are you doing today, Susan?
Hi, Michael. Good to be with you. Yeah, I love a good mission statement.
Good to have you here. It's a thorny topic, as you and I know. We see a lot of these mission statements and see some good ones and see some not so good ones. So figured we'd have you come in and chat on a few questions we've got related to mission statements. For those of you just joining us, we're here on our channel at Grow Schools talking Tuesday Tips. Today's topic is on all things mission statements. And if this is your first time joining us, we're here every Tuesday talking the biggest challenges facing school leaders, and ask Susan to come in and have a chat about mission statements. So Susan, I'm going to hop right into our questions and we'll start here. From your perspective, what makes a mission statement truly impactful and memorable for prospective families?
It's got to be something easy to repeat. It has to be achievable. I think too often they're too lofty. They can be unattainable. They're written in a very flowery kind of language that can also be a little tough to understand. It's like, well, what are you really trying to achieve? What is the thing that your school is really going to work on? But yeah, and then when they become unattainable, they lose their purpose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's such a good insight. That we see, as mentioned, a ton of them. And certainly, I think you hit the nail on the head there when you talk about specifically how you got to live up to this mission statement, right? It's not just about putting language out there that sounds good. It's about meeting that mission statement in every experience that you create for families and kids, right?
Right. That's true. And also, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be it doesn't have to revolve around academic achievement. There are a lot of other things that schools can hope to imbue into their students, because we know not every student's going to be a straight A student. Not every student's going to go to Harvard. And so thinking about what can happen within the four walls of our school that is actually going to serve the student for the rest of their lives. And that could be character development. That could be, the willingness to try and take risks. So I think it's really important to be more expansive and not just think about, everybody's going to get into an Ivy League or something along those lines.
Yeah. Are there common mistakes that schools and school leaders should avoid when drafting or revising that mission statement? Do you have some thoughts there?
Yeah, I do. Well, for one thing, some schools don't want to touch it. Those words are golden. And it kind of is a painful process to create a mission statement. For some schools, they'll sequester their board over a weekend. They'll actually create a board retreat. And these people will be at it for 48 hours and coming up and parsing every single word. And so once those words are all pulled together, there may be an unwillingness. We're not touching this. We're not touching this for 20 years. We're not touching this for 100 years. The school that I actually attended, has 100-word mission statement. It's the worst thing. I love this school, amazing education, worst mission statement on the face of the earth. So it's got to be something repeatable. It's got to be something that everybody can say, whether it's one of your teachers or a first grader or a second grader, and it's got to be realistic. And that's, I think, what I worry about more than anything else is how realistic is your statement.
Yeah, does it live up to what you can actually deliver as a school at the end of the day, right? I do love that insight about it being able to be repeated, whether it is, the executive director of the school principal, the kids that are at your school, the families that are at your school, because I think certainly that would speak to just, how simple versus how sophisticated it is, right? And that leveraging language that's easy for someone to understand and utilize, right?
That's right. And I mean, authorizers and accreditation teams always want to see that mission statement on every classroom wall. Well, if it's sitting there and nobody's paying any attention to it, it's just room decoration. It loses meaning. And so to be able to think about it, for teachers to be able to think about, I'm educating these kids because I want their character development. I want them to take risks. I want them to try harder. This is the mission of what our school is doing. it becomes a repeatable kind of a thing. And it actually, you can speak to it and say, we are fulfilling our mission in how we're educating our students. And that's key, because a mission statement actually has to be achievable. It has to be the thing that your school actually is doing.
Yeah, I want to ask you a side note to something you mentioned just a moment ago, and that is, your school having this 100-word statement. Is it okay? Give us a yes or no, up or down answer, if you will. Is it okay to change your mission statement once you've got one baked?
So I am all about changing the mission statement. So the school that I attended, it was a private school in New York, what is now 150 years old. And that mission statement, it's been tweaked a little bit, but by and large, it's a 150-year-old mission statement. Well, times have changed. Education has changed. Life has changed. I think you can hold very lightly to your mission statement. If you're a 0-year school and you've crafted this kind of aspirational mission statement, and then 5 years in, it's like, this is not what our students need. We can be serving them in a much better way. You have to look at your mission statement again. Whether you're tweaking a couple of words, whether you're taking out full phrases, whether you're making a complete revision, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Hopefully we all continue to grow, and it's all about that growth mindset that we're trying to put into students. We have to have that as well, and as does our missions for our different schools.
Yeah, it's a cool insight to think about, that if we are going to ask our students and our school leaders to evolve, and our teachers to evolve, right, our mission statement should evolve with the times that they're in as well. I want to ask a question. Okay, so let's say you're starting a school, or you're going to revise that mission statement. You've obviously got a ton of stakeholders, like your team, your staff, your kids, the families of those kids. You've got board members, you've got other stakeholders. Who do you involve in shaping that mission statement? Is it everyone? And then I also want to ask sort of a part two of that question of, like, how do you recommend getting those people involved in the process?
Yeah. So part one, personally, I think if you want buy-in from your entire school community, you give them the opportunity to speak into what that mission statement is. Now, that could be challenging. If you have a large school community, you have 100 people between your board members, your teachers, your staff, and all of that. I mean, that becomes a little unwieldy to do. You can break into different groups, or one way that you can do it is you give the main responsibility to the board to kind of put the thing together, and then you go through a revision process with the rest of your stakeholders. Parents love being part of this process. And sometimes if you were going to kind of create a hierarchy, you may want to put them kind of on the lowest level, just because you want the people who are involved with the day-to-day running of the organization to be the top level people to be making some decisions. Remind me the second part of that question. So
second part is like, how do you recommend getting them involved? Do you bring them into meetings? Do you sort of ask for survey responses? What's good ways that you can get some tangible feedback from these different stakeholders?
I honestly feel like, we don't use them anymore, those word clouds that were kind of hip and cool before, where like one word would be bigger and bigger. I mean, that's not a bad tool to use. My thing is, I think, throw everything at the wall, and come up with a different series, different words, different things like that, and see what is really resonating, the thing that bubbles up to the top, and make that kind of your priority. It does become unwieldy, again, if you're involving too many stakeholders. So one process that you can think about is actually starting with your board, who are really responsible for how your school is run. And then they come up with kind of a draft message, and then circulate that. And you could do it in the level like school leaders, and then teachers, and then do that way. But I also think there's a lot of value in keeping students in that process as well. The more mature students, middle and high school students, because they're the ones who are going to be the most honest with you and say, that's never going to happen here. This is what I want to get out of my education. And there's a lot of value to that student voice being part of the process of coming up with the mission statement.
Yeah, certainly it would make it really approachable if you have that student voice, that kid voice, as part of the feedback loop. I would imagine that it'll make it more approachable in the end to kids. It'll make more sense to them, rather than having sort of this very wordy, lofty statement that doesn't understand like how that actually comes to life.
Kids are really invested in their schools.
Yeah.
And they really want to be proud of what's happening in their school, and they know what they want to get out of a school. So
yeah, such good insight.
And they're really sharp, they actually would be very helpful in this process.
Yeah, I'm curious. This is a question I was thinking about as you were responding, just about this idea of word cloud and throwing everything at the walls and then figuring out what works is I would imagine much like defining your brand as a school, defining your mission statement is also about saying what you're for and what you're not for, right? There needs to be very clear language that explains this is who you are for, right? So one sort of thought there is, how do you make sure, do you need to have like a decision-making team that's like, okay, we're going to pick the best of what we heard and pull it together? Or is this like group think? What's the best way to get sort of like figuring out what that mission statement is?
Yeah, I mean, you could go super formal in the process, and you could do analysis, and this is, to be perfectly honest, crafting a mission statement is kind of a painful process.
Yeah.
And so you could stretch it out and you can make it more painful, by analyzing every single word and comma and period and all of that. Or you could really make it a discussion and a lot of, what is that expression? There's no wrong answer in a brainstorm.
Yep.
And just be able to just brainstorm. People are most authentic and most honest when you can just have a conversation.
Yeah.
I feel like surveys put too many guardrails around things, and they don't actually allow you to broaden out what your thinking is. Like if you end up with, okay, here are our 3 top choices for a mission statement, that's farther down the road, just in terms of you will have gone through a lot of brainstorming processes already before you get to that point. And again, to the point we were talking about earlier about revising mission statements, taking some time to say, okay, here's our mission statement today, what revisions can we make, and brainstorming through that and saying, well, this isn't really happening. Maybe we need to think more about character development, or we need to think more about more inclusivity, or there may be something that may, just because of the time that we're living in and the culture of the world and all of that, there's maybe things that we need to focus on that haven't been there. So being able to hear those different voices without putting any kind of guardrails around it, I think is really helpful.
Yeah. Do you recommend to school leaders that they sort of keep a pulse on their mission statements, how they're fulfilling it? Is there like a way, whether it's sort of objectively or subjectively, is there a way that they can be getting feedback on if they're meeting that mission statement?
I think that's really important. It's almost, I know I've been in a lot of PD situations where it's almost the benediction. You walk in the room, it's let's remember what our mission statement is, or it's the closing prayer of, whatever that professional development is. But it is something that has to be, everybody should be reminded about what the mission statement is. And that goes back to, again, keeping it short, simple, significant, repeatable, something that we'll remember easily, because if it becomes too complex, you lose sight of what it is we're really trying to accomplish. Yeah. It's also really important when you're trying to attract new team members, to remind them this is what we're doing here, and to be able to confirm this is what we're doing here. So
yeah, good. Such good insights there. Do you have a thought on sort of length? Is there a, I get asked this as a marketing leader, what's the perfect, sort of length for a subject line on an email campaign, or what's the right words to use there? Are there sort of like a couple initial bullet points around best practices for mission statements, whether it's length or certain word choices? What are some thoughts there?
Yeah, when I first started doing this kind of work around mission statements, that number 25 words or less was the thing that was kind of bouncing around at the time. You don't often find 25 word or less mission statements. So I would strongly encourage that, because again, that makes it easy to remember. It makes it easy for every team member, to remember.
Yeah. The other one that always pops up, right, is that vision statement. Can you give us sort of like a really grounding framework or rule of what's the difference between a mission statement and what's the difference between a vision statement?
Right. So the mission statement is the why. Why do we exist? What is it we're trying to accomplish? When a kid has gone through our school and been educated here, what are they walking away with? The vision statement is more, here's how we're going to get that done. And then I want to add a little one, the value statement. I was thinking about it this morning about how to describe this, and I kind of came up with this analogy of an ice cream sundae. So your mission statement is the ice cream. You can't have an ice cream sundae without the ice cream. The vision statement is the fudge sauce, which obviously it's not going to be turned into a sundae if it's not the fudge sauce. And then the values is that cherry on top. You can live without it. It's not essential, but it makes it taste that much better. So the values is kind of, so mission is the why, vision is the how, and the values is this is the approach that we're going to use to achieve the why.
I love that analogy. As a massive fan of ice cream, certainly one of my favorite food groups. I love that analogy. Thanks for that one.
Yeah, I'm thinking spaghetti and meatballs, but I like the ice cream sundae better. So
Yeah, I feel like ice cream is sort of the universal thing that we can certainly make an analogy of for anything, but I love that one for sure. Let's talk about some examples. You've obviously seen a ton of good schools out there that are doing good work, but also have great mission statements that support that work. Do you have any examples out there that you've seen lately that you said like this one really hit home? Thoughts there?
Yeah. So we're working with a school in Phoenix called Empower College Prep, and their mission statement is to prepare scholars to succeed in college, solve real-world problems, and maximize their impact in the world. Short, sweet, to the point. I like that. Their vision statement. Their vision statement, which we should probably talk to them about, is all people are empowered with the education, purpose, and character to transform their community, country, and world. That's not really telling you the how as much. It's more like an explanation of it's kind of a confirmation on what the mission is. And sometimes that happens with a vision statement. It's more of a confirmation of, here's what our mission is. Here's why we're confirming that this is our mission.
Yeah.
So, that's something to be thinking about as well.
Any other examples to share? Good ones out there you've seen lately?
Let's see. Well, so this is a school that I worked with in Boston. This is a private school, but I like this one as well because it's not totally focused on academics. So Boston Trinity Academy educates students from diverse backgrounds in an academically demanding, Christ-centered community, inspiring them to lead lives of faith, integrity, and service. So what I like about that is you're not being too lofty in what your expectations are just in terms of academic performance. And that's a trap that I worry that a lot of schools fall into. It's all about the achievement. It's all about the test scores. And school is so much more than that. Kids are learning so much more than just, passing tests.
Yeah, I do love how that one's specific too. It's got some very specific measures of how it can be measured against, right? So I do love that part of that mission statement as well.
And I have one more. So this is a performing arts school in Colorado, Parker Performing Arts School. As the performing arts school of choice, we foster confidence, celebrate diversity, and emphasize academic excellence. So I like that one too, because it does focuses, this is a very unique charter school where it really is a performance-based school. But I love how it's not just becoming a performer, you're building confidence, there's diversity, and there is academics in that. And that's not even 25 words. So.
Yeah. I almost love the other sort of analogy that you could use there. Analogy is the wrong word, but maybe like a framework for that one is kind of like SMART goals, like the whole specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time bound. It doesn't obviously have time bound, but it's specific, it could be measured, it is achievable, and it's super relevant for that school as well. So I love maybe that as like a framework of how you could create a mission statement too.
Yeah. And to a point you made earlier about whether you can revise a mission statement, I think if you are a 0-year school and you are now creating this aspirational mission statement, and then you get in the classroom and you populate your school with students, it's like, oh, actually, the value that they're coming away with, or the thing that they're coming away with, is very different than what we initially thought they'd be coming away with. And so having that flexibility and that nimbleness to be able to tweak a statement, you can always reprint the signs that you have.
That's true. You can always change your website as well, right? So we've all got content management systems that make that easy as well. Well, Susan, we try and keep these conversations to 10 to 15 minutes, and we're almost at minute 20. But I feel like we'll have to have you back on for another conversation related to mission and vision statements. Maybe we'll do like a live breakdown. We'll bring in a couple of different examples, and we can talk through what's working, what's not working. But I'd love to continue this conversation, so we'll have to ask you to come back and do this again.
Yeah, that would be great. And then we can hit on taglines, which is the marriage of
Ooh.
mission, vision, and value statement equal, makes the baby tagline.
Yeah,
So,
now we're getting into the marketing world, which you and I could definitely spend some time on. So we
great.
will leave the conversation there. We really appreciate Susan Yem's conversation today on mission statements for schools. As always, we're here every Tuesday around 10 a.m. Pacific time, having a conversation about the biggest challenges facing school leaders. And we did have a chat today with Susan on mission statements. Take a listen if you're just joining in to all the incredible tips and conversation that Susan provided on the topic. With that, we will say a big thanks again to Susan for joining us. We appreciate you being here. And to our viewers and everyone listening, thanks again for joining us here on the Grow Schools channel. We'll see you next time on our next episode of Tuesday Tips. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.